You're tuned in to The Andrew Lawton Show.
I want to talk about some battlegrounds that oftentimes do not get nearly the attention they deserve, and that is the fights taking place in municipal politics. Now, in Ontario, we had a round of municipal elections just a few months ago. There were some contentious school board battles as well. School board, another area where I think more people, certainly those on the right, need to pay a bit more attention. But a new municipal watchdog has started to take aim at these big bloated city council budgets. They are coming out guns blazing. Stella Ambler, the former Conservative member of Parliament, now the president of Municipal Watch, calling out municipal madness. Stella, always good to talk to you. Thanks for coming on today. You were very kind enough to invite me to speak at the Albany Club when my book, The Freedom Convoy, came out. So happy to return the favor at least a little bit here. You've done federal politics. I know you've been involved at all levels. Why do you think municipal politics is where your efforts need to be focused now?
Yeah, actually, that it does kind of segue into that. I have been involved mostly in my long political career at the provincial and federal levels, and you know, just recently I realized that there's no opposition built into the municipal level. So in Ottawa, we have the House of Commons and question period, and everyone knows who the opposition party is, and their job is to oppose the government. And it's the same in the legislatures across Canada. The opposition is built right into the city, into the system, and that actually provides automatically a level of oversight. And we don't have that at the local level. And so I've been finding that folks are just ordinary Canadians are very concerned about what's happening in their cities and towns, and they just don't know what to do about it. They need help. And so I thought, well, I'd like to help them speak out and call out examples of silliness and nonsense in the municipalities. I call it madness, by the way. You know, I like the alliteration, municipal madness. So it works.
We'll get to some of the specific issues in a moment here. Certainly in an Ontario context, in most provinces, BC is a bit of an outlier here. There aren't political parties at the municipal level. Sometimes you see things that loosely resemble slates, but oftentimes I think the real advantage of municipal politics is that you can have somewhat more independent-minded people. They aren't whipped. But in your view, is this a left-right issue?
Absolutely not. Of course, I come at it personally as a small c conservative, and there's nothing wrong as conservatives, as people who want to see more transparency, restraint, fiscal restraint. But you know, it's not, municipal politics is not generally partisan. There are no political parties involved other than, as you say, BC. But I find though that, so it's not partisan in nature, but it's more, in my mind, about common sense. You know, we really need to take a look at what folks are doing. You talked about government. There's a whole debate in Canada now, is government broken, right? And so I thought about this municipally, and I thought, well, I'm not sure if broken is the right word, but certainly there needs to be some perspective brought in. There are far too many municipalities who are overspending, overtaxing, over-regulating, and just the kinds of policies and programs that they're putting into place are sometimes not even in their jurisdiction to have any say, and yet they waste resources debating it, studying it, and you know, I think we need someone to call that out, and I want to be the person to do that.
Yeah, I mean, I generally have a years-long crusade against bylaw enforcement, which I feel is probably a department that I would support abolishing wholesale. I won't get you to comment on that because I don't want you to be off the ground before you're really off the ground with this. But the one thing I will point out is that there have been so many issues where someone is fined for something so ridiculous. A case in Oshawa recently where a group of volunteers were fined because they wanted to distribute food and necessities to the homeless and they didn't have a permit from the city to do it. I once had a ticket because I was legally parked in front of my own house, but the car was facing the wrong direction. And it was just for a very silly reason because I was rearranging things in the driveway. But very stupid stuff like that comes up. And every time I hear about these things, it's like, oh yeah, it's a $50 ticket, it's a $60 ticket. But it's part of a culture, I think, that is bigger than that in municipalities, which is this really incessant need to regulate these very minute details about people's lives.
I have a friend in London, so you two could meet up for coffee, and he could tell you about his fight with the city over a particular tree on his property. I won't go into the details, but suffice to say he wrote many letters to the mayor, to his councillors, and I don't think he won in the end, but the level of bureaucracy needed to deal with that it was startling to him. He could not believe what happened. But, you know, I think a lot of the issues too stem from municipalities, municipal councillors wanting to maybe even prove their worth, let's say, and they want to signal that they are on top of the issues of the day. So they declare climate emergencies, for example. And, you know, what good is that really going to do? Then that trickles down a little further into, let's say, natural gas bans, which are all the rage now. You know, there are places like Montreal where you can't have a wood-burning fireplace anymore. Yeah, it's really, the issues are not within their jurisdiction. They're wasting our tax dollars just by talking about them. And even if the province, you know, Andrew, I saw a report by the Ontario's independent electricity system operator that said that yes, we could ban natural gas by the year 2050, and it would cost approximately $400 billion. So this is the sandbox that municipalities are playing in now, right? It's just, let's stick to service delivery. There's enough of responsibility to go around, and when your responsibilities are water quality, fire, ambulance, police, roads, transit, and parks and recreation, and there's a ton of policies and programs that they already have to do. So, and now they're getting into, you know, how people heat their homes, and you know, frankly, the people who are losing are the people who can afford it the least. The people who can't afford to retrofit their home for $100,000 to use a heat pump instead of natural gas, for example.
You mentioned London, a city I live in Ontario. A friend of mine told me this story years ago that I've never actually shared on the show, and I should now, because he had a visitor that was coming in from out of town who was driving through London, and they drove by this, you know, giant multi-million-dollar water park the city built. They drove by these stupid metal trees that the city had built and spent money on. They drove by all of this stuff that the city had spent millions and millions on to bring the city up to this global standard they had set. And the only thing the person noticed was that, like, the potholes were going to destroy his car's suspension. So it's like cities need to do the things that, like, do the bare minimum before they get to these really lofty aspirational things. But right now, like, there's the big discussion going on of these so-called 15-minute cities and redesigning the entire urban planning to make everything a 15-minute jaunt from your house. And it's like, focus on the basics first. Like, if you were able to do all these core things well, I might have confidence that you could do the big stuff well. But cities aren't doing that by and large.
Oh, nothing scares me more than these 15-minute cities. The more I go down that rabbit hole, and the more afraid I become that more municipalities in Canada won't start looking into this. I think Edmonton, is it Edmonton? Or and Newmarket has definitely talked about it.
Edmonton has as well, I believe, yeah.
I wasn't sure. I've been reading a bit about Edmonton because they're proposing, I believe it's a 7% tax hike, property tax hike, over the next 4 years. So I mean, compounded, if you think about what that adds up to, most people just can't afford this. In my old stomping grounds of Mississauga, they just passed what the mayor called a no frills budget, with a only 3% tax increase, which is twice, I know, right? Twice as big as last year's increase, and it includes so no frills, which they consider to be very frugal, I guess, and they're holding back. That still includes a 2% increase in salaries and compensation for all non-union employees, including the councillors and the mayor, and it includes $22 million more for salaries and compensation. Plus, I hate to tell you, I think it was 10 or 14 more overnight bylaw officers. So if you park your car the wrong way again, there'll be someone in Mississauga who will give you a ticket for that.
I appreciate the forewarning there, but yeah, I learned my lesson once on that one. But let me ask you then, Stella, do you think the problem is that provinces are being too lenient with how they let municipalities run their affairs? Or do you think that the problem is actually at the municipal level and that we have to just change the culture there?
I think in some provinces, the provincial governments are not helping. But I think they're doing, to be honest with you, the municipalities are doing enough damage on their own. There aren't too many... I don't think you could blame the provincial government, for example, for an Ottawa LRT that doesn't run when there's freezing rain. That really, you can't really blame the province for that. As we might try, but we can't. We can't blame the BC government when Vancouver decides to buy electric fire trucks that pump 40% less water, which becomes a public safety issue. I mean, frankly, in some cases, I wish the provinces would step in. But I don't think I won't hold my breath for that to happen.
I know you've just launched a Municipal Watch within the last couple of weeks here, but do you have a first big battle in mind? Do you have the Goliath you want to slay first?
I'm working on so many things, but every time I think, okay, I've found it, the one, I get an email from someone because the response has been just incredible. I'm already overwhelmed with emails. I'm sure you can understand. People have so much to say and so much to talk about. So while I am researching a big project on increase in number of full-time employees. So wait for it because I'm looking into that. I've studied about 20 cities so far, and it's already shocking. But I want to gather more data and on the growth in cities, so population versus full-time. But then I'll get an email from someone like I did this morning in Calgary who asked me the question, why is it that a municipal councillor in the city of Calgary has 3 employees in his or her office, and MLAs only have 1? So it's little thing, and I think, okay, well, that's not something I need to spend hours researching. But on the other hand, wait a minute, why are things like this happening? And, again, does it pass that common sense sniff test? And does it tell you, when you hear about things like this, does it tell you that the municipality, the city or town is actually looking out for people and putting people first? Or are they putting their own interests first? Or are they trying to somehow just be politically correct or virtue signal on some particular issue? So these are the kinds of things so I start out on the lofty aspirational level, and then I stop and think, wait a minute, maybe I should do something about the fact that maybe I should call attention and shine a light on the fact that municipal councillors are staff heavy. Anyway,
and to be honest, it sounds like you need to run for Calgary City Council so you'll get 3 staffers to help you get through the workload.
Exactly. I do have some help, some volunteers and some interns, and that's going very well. But my hope is that I can form, with all of these people who are emailing from across the country, I can form a coalition of local watchdogs who will also help me. And so far that's going pretty well.
Well, it's an important battleground, and it's easy to take aim at the Canadian government. There's just one. It's easier to some extent to take aim at provincial governments. We've got 10 of them. When you get to municipalities, you're talking about hundreds of large and medium-sized ones, not to mention thousands beyond that. So I think it very much needs some scrutiny here. I'm so glad you're doing it. People can learn more at municipalwatch.ca. President of Municipal Watch, former MP Stella Ambler. Always a pleasure, Stella. Thanks so much for coming on today.
Thank you, Andrew. It was my pleasure.
Thanks for listening to The Andrew Lawton Show. Support the program by donating to True North at www.tnc.news.